What's up, guys? Charlie Scruggs here with the All Season Podcast. This is my first time doing this, first time ever recording a podcast by myself. So bear with me. We're gonna learn this thing together. So we're here. It's January 1st. Happy New Year to everybody. And today is a special day. It's the Rose Bowl, ladies and gentlemen. And today I just want to talk about a few things, that I think could benefit both teams and helping them to win the game. I know if you're like me, you've done nothing but watch, content, college football, anything you can, here for these last couple weeks waiting for this game, and it seems like it was an eternity away, and now it's here. So I'm just gonna go through these things, and let's see if we can get a good game today. So first and foremost, Alabama, Kalen DeBoer, they've had a great year for anyone else's, fan base's standards. And they've had a great year if you're a level-headed Alabama fan, from their point of view, right? Year two, built a culture. Nobody transferred in the spring portal. Got to this point, a lot of adversity, created history for the, being the first team to ever win 4 straight SEC games and without a day off. So that's impressive in itself. But anyway, up to this point, there's a lot of ways I could go with this game. I was trying to think of an angle how I wanted to take it. On the Alabama side of things, to see, how they could, win this game, right? Because if you look at the media, if you watch all these people and everything like that, it seems like Alabama shouldn't even get on the plane to go to Pasadena, right? Don't even show up. They're on borrowed time. Things have to be just right in order for Alabama to win. And, if it was up to the world, again, this game wouldn't even be played. We go ahead and send Indiana on to the next round. But on the other note, Indiana has had a great season. I mean, that goes, without being said, right? Undefeated. Big Ten champs took down the mighty, Ohio State. And, you look at that game, even you might say, oh, well, Ohio State missed a chip shot field goal from 20-something yards, to tie the game. They went forward on 4th down, in the red zone, didn't get it. I mean, all these things, but bottom line is Indiana found a way to win the game, right? And at this point of the year, that's all that matters. Doesn't matter what it looks like, you just win the game. And Curt Cignetti, like many other coaches, has an Alabama pedigree of some sorts. He was with Nick Saban in the, peak, if you will. I mean, I know Nick Saban won his whole time there, but, he was there at a really crucial time when Nick Saban was really rocking and rolling. And if you listen to the guy talk, he takes that with him wherever he goes. He gives Nick Saban credit, praise, whatever you want to call it, every chance he gets. So this Indiana team, man, if you watch them, specifically the Ohio State game, the most recent one, I mean, they are just tough. They are tough, tough, tough. That is what, to me, really, sets them above, the rest of the teams they've played. Is, like Saban always says, it's withstanding that toughness and intensity for 60 minutes. If you look at that Ohio State game, I think it was like the first play of the game or the first pass. It was in the first drive, I know. Mendoza, the quarterback, got smoked and laid on the ground and was writhing in pain for almost 10 minutes, it seemed like. And he, came out the game and everybody was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? What's going on? And his little brother came in for a play. His little brother's the backup. That's pretty cool. And, he came back in. And if you watch that game, I mean, time and time again, the Ohio State defense, every time they hit them, they really laid it to them, but they got back up, they kept going, and, you know, again, they won the game. So you got to give credit where it's due for Indiana. I mean, they've had a great year. They're not here by, you know, mistake, accident. I mean, Cignetti's been around for a long time. He's been a collegiate coach since he was 23 years old. So the guy's earned it. Now, if you're Alabama, again, I touched on it, but you look at it like, man, you know, how did we get here? Like, what did that season look like? And if you go back all the way to the first quarter of the season, it's amazing the ups and downs that not only the team but the media, national, worldwide was saying from that first loss at FSU, from that first loss. I mean, they got absolutely buried by everyone. They said you had a whole offseason to prepare, this and that, should have came in ready to go and didn't just get beat, but watching the film doesn't lie, just was not the brand of football that anybody, much less Alabama, would like to play. And it was pretty rough. So, you know, they got buried. They came back again, went on that streak, won 9 in a row. And for a portion there, it was like the consensus was nobody can beat Alabama. If they're playing this way, like at this level, you know, you can forget about it. They're just a well-oiled machine. They were clicking, had some special teams issues and whatnot, but, you know, they were rolling. And then, you know, then started kind of the teeter-totter, right? It started with guys getting hurt and then led to offensive line play being sloppy, things like that. And it became, again, either high or low. When people talk about Alabama, there's never any like middle ground there. It's like they got to do all these things to win, all these things got to click, you know, and then at the same time, they would say, you know, when they're doing bad, it's like, it's awful. It's a dumpster fire. Like, it looks like a team that, it shouldn't even be in the conference. It was like so bad at times, it looked like. But I think that's just from the brand, right? Alabama. I think these things are magnified when you're Alabama, new coach, all these things. So, but when you really look at it, Alabama is more battle tested than anybody. They've won in a million different ways, you know, and that's what I think is going to lead me right here into what's going to, help them succeed in the Rose Bowl today. And I'll start with the players being healthy, right? I mean, when you hear it from the coaching staff, you know, DeBoer, Grubb, you know, and Womack, all in their press conferences throughout the week, they all said pretty much the same thing. It's the healthiest we've been since maybe the middle of September. And I think we're even, Alabama's even healthier than they were then. If you look at Quay Russaw is back closest he's been to 100% all year. Jan Miller, same thing. People forget he missed with the collarbone, missed with the, lower leg injury. And you might say, well, Bama's 120th in the country and running the ball, which they are, which is crazy. But it's really pass protection. That's where Jan Miller is really a huge piece for this team. Pass protection, leadership. Daniel Harris, 245 pounds and runs like a dump truck, but when he's in pass protection, he looks like he's, scared. Let's just call it what it is. So the health for this team, coming back, it's real. It's real. It's the same personnel you saw on the field during that stretch where they looked like they were unstoppable. Josh Cuevas, I mean, you name them, right? They're there. And I think when people talk about this game and how Alabama doesn't have a chance again, I look at last year, right? The teams that got that first round bye, they didn't succeed, right? And you might say, well, a couple of them shouldn't have been there, Boise State, whatever. Rust is a real thing, especially when you have a long season like this. A week or two, it's welcomed, but that long and then playing in a stage like this, it's just, it's just tough. It's tough to come back and be sharp as you want to be. So I think Alabama, with their health, that's first and foremost what's going to give them, their best chance to win. You got to have bodies, right? Um, I think uh, if you're Indiana, looking at kind of how they would do what they need to do to win this game is do what you've done all year, right? They don't really run a complicated offense. They don't run complicated defense. They just execute at such a high level, such a high level. And I know I mentioned Nick Saban a while ago, but man, when you watch them, they look like, in old Saban team in terms of not beating themselves, right? I mean, they're the top of the country in penalties, negative plays, all these things. I mean, they are elite in all the little things, all the critical factors that don't really show up on the stat sheet, but really determine how good of a season you have. So again, they don't have a guy on that defense that's more than a 3-star that was coming out of high school, but they just, again, they execute at such a high level. So I think that if you're looking at it like that, again, just do what you've been done all year. Don't let the moment get too big. Don't think of really where you're at. Enjoy it, but understand this is just another football game, right? So I'll go to a few keys to the game. I know I kind of been rambling all over the place again. This is my first time ever doing this, guys. So apologize if I'm kind of all over the place. I'll kind of go for my keys of the game right here. That way I don't get off on any more tangents or whatnot. So I told you about the two teams, kind of how their seasons went. But I'll start with Indiana, and I kind of just led into it before that and before this. It's play ball, right? It's you look at the other side, you see the big A, the team that everybody has looked at and said that's what we're trying to be, as a program for a long time. And if you look at just a couple of years ago, Indiana was the if that's the word, losingest program in the history of college football. And you look at last year, Indiana got, put out pretty quick, in the playoffs, came back this year, and it's just been a different team. So if you're Indiana, go out there and don't get blown away with the crowd, with the colors. It's Indiana, versus Alabama. Keep it simple. And then on the defensive side, they play a lot of zone coverage, right? They again don't have the athletes. So, how do you account for that? It's putting a lot of bodies around the ball, a lot of, gang tackling, things like that to try and execute. And they do a great job of it. I mean, again, top of the leaderboard in every category on both sides of the ball. So if you're Indiana, I know it's easier said than done. It's kind of not really a blow you away type of deal, but that's who they are, right? They keep their head down. They keep on moving along. They don't buy into we're Indiana and we're all this, like the worst team to ever play the game. They embrace who they are. They embrace the underdog role. If you hear their quarterback talk, their position players talk, they acknowledge the fact that they weren't recruited highly, that they weren't, big shots coming out of high school, but they just love the game. And Curt Cignetti's motto is it's productivity over potential, right? And that's what's got him here, because potential to me is another word for you haven't done anything yet. So if you're Indiana, you're just playing football. It's not much to it. And if you're Alabama, it seems a little more complex than that, just because you have seen up and downs so much throughout the year. And when they were at their best, Ty Simpson was dialed in. The offensive line was absolutely, locked in protection-wise on passing. And running the ball, it's a disappointment, but kind of like an afterthought, right? Their rushing stats are skewed a little bit because of the sacks Ty Simpson takes. I want to say they had, 70 or so like true rushing yards against Oklahoma. I might be wrong, but like 20 or 30 of them are taken away because of sacks and whatnot. So the numbers do look kind of skewed there. But if you're Alabama, I think, and this is going to sound crazy coming from an Alabama team, but I truly think that 5 or 6 plays of 5 or 6 runs of 5 or more yards might win you this game. I think that might be the case. I mean, and that doesn't sound like a formula for anybody, but for these circumstances, this team, the biggest play of the Oklahoma game was a play action to Jeremy Bernard, the crazy catch over the back of the defender. Alabama has not had a chance to run play action pretty much all year because their run game just isn't there. So if they can just get anything there, it would bode well for them, right? And then defensively, well, let me touch on one more thing on the offense. I told you that Indiana runs primarily zone, and I think this is where this plays into Alabama's hands. If you're Ryan Grubb, Ty Simpson is, to me, the best quarterback in college football at diagnosing a defense and what they do. I don't think there's anyone better at it. And you might say, quarterbacks prefer, man-to-man because they can just kind of get the ball out there and they kind of 50-50, right? Everyone knows, what the 50-50 ball is. But Ty Simpson, he doesn't need a lot of window. If you're out there, and you're running his own defense, he knows exactly where his players are gonna be every single time, and it seems like teams are just a little bit late on reacting to it. And the formula for beating Alabama has been bring a ton of pressure or get a ton of pressure, which that's the case for a lot of teams, right? But bring the pressure, and play some help coverage on the outside, and kind of just disrupt them. Don't give them a chance to even get comfortable back there. So Indiana's been good enough to get pressure up front. They're missing their one of their best defensive linemen, but if they can get pressure with the front four and be able to play some help coverage behind the defenses, it's going to be a little harder, right? I mean, if they get pressure, if Ty Simpson's running around for his life like he was for 5 straight quarters from Georgia to the first quarter of Oklahoma, Bama doesn't have a chance, right? So I think them playing a lot of zone benefits Alabama, actually. I think Alabama, getting some positive in the run game just to let make Indiana think about something else is good. It's beneficial. It's going to have to happen, I think. And then I think, the X factors here are, a few key players for Alabama. I mean, when I talk about this defense of Indiana not having the big stars, super athletic, fast guys, they got some dudes. They're good. But Alabama's receiving core, not just the wide receivers, but you tie in Josh Cuevas, even without Ryan Williams performing great, is top 5 in the country. So if you can just get a little space, right, a little, cushion there, that's all it takes to blow right by somebody, right? And if you're Ty Simpson, you got to expect the pressure. If you're Ryan Grubb, you got to expect the pressure. And what did they do against Oklahoma that started, benefiting them? And that was, just getting the ball out quick. kind of, sugar huddle, get up there, get it out. Again, you got the playmakers, man. You got the playmakers. And if you're facing zone, you're going to see some holes out there. You just got to take them. I mean, it's the Rose Bowl. You got to take them. And Ty Simpson has kind of got faulted some this year for holding the ball too long and whatnot. Again, you just got to let it rip. It's funny hearing Alabama say, that they're playing with house money, nothing to lose when you're Alabama, right? And then if you're Indiana, key player on defense is that little DB they got, man. I think his last name is Pons. I can't think of his first name, but he's a technician out there. He's only 5'9", 190, and he's not just a good coverage guy, but the guy he's a textbook tackler, right? And he's going to be on, whoever the hot receiver is for that play, whether it be Jeremy or, Isaiah, whoever, he's going to be on him. And he did get exposed a little bit, I'd say, in the Ohio State game. I wouldn't even say exposed. He was on Jeremiah Smith, and Jeremiah Smith is the best receiver in college football. He's got almost, a foot on him height-wise. He's 50 pounds heavier. The guy played great coverage. Jeremiah just made the plays, right? So, him, communicating to the rest of his team there and kind of being in a position that's going to be a big thing. And then finally, I feel like I'm just all over the place at this point. This has just like been a one-take video, just on a whim, was ready to get this thing rolling. So, again, this could be, all over the place. I guess kind of one thing I'll say about Alabama is that, their defense is to me the most underrated defense in all of college football. I think they don't get talked about enough, and I think that's mainly because Alabama's offense is such an anomaly to where there's so much talk about there that the defense just kind of, again, gets overlooked. You've never seen a team that's literally 120th out of 130-something teams in rushing make it to this point in the playoffs or this far in the season. So Ty Simpson has been the talking point. But this defense, man, from Bray Hubbard, Justin Jefferson, Deontay getting healthy throughout the season, Xavier Brown turned into an All-American. They absolutely are fantastic, and give Kane Womack credit. The guy, year two in his defense, has got these guys on, on a great path, and they've done fantastic. I think Indiana's receiving core, Surratt, Becker, who had to step up last game because their best receiver, Cooper, got hurt, and he showed out, pretty much won them the game against Ohio State. Those guys are great, but I think Alabama has the defensive backfield to neutralize that. And if this defense is going to be successful, I mean, yes, the DBs in the defensive backfield, they're going to do their job, safeties and all. But this defensive line, when you've got Quay Russaw, he probably won't start, but, he'll be out there, let's just call it. You got Yanze Pierre in there. You got Tim Keenan, LT Overton, James Smith. That four right there, that is atop of the SEC four. And then if you look at all the guys that had to play throughout the season because of injury, London Simmons, 3-star from Mississippi, has been fantastic. Edric Hill has been great. Keon Keeley, a guy that was probably, Bama's biggest recruit, a top 5 recruit in the country a couple of years ago, hasn't made any noise, has came out last couple of games and really absolutely dominated, 6'5", 270. I mean, this defensive line has came a long way, and everyone wants to knock Alabama's pass rush. They haven't had much of one. Hey, 5 sacks in the second half against Oklahoma. I know they had a really young, inexperienced offensive line, but it built some mojo. It built some confidence. If they can get after Mendoza, again, You're not going to rattle the guy. He's the Heisman winner. He showed it against Ohio State. Just get him off his spot a little bit, just a little bit, and the secondary and all, clean it up. So 25 minutes in here. Again, I had some points I wanted to go through, but I just, again, I have so much in my head here thinking about this game. I probably missed a few of them, and again, still getting used to this whole podcast thing. So bear with me. We're gonna grow together, right? So I'll end it with, I guess I'm not gonna give a prediction, score prediction, but I'll tell you how I think this game is gonna play out, right? The second half of that Oklahoma game was really from the second quarter. The last 3 quarters of the Oklahoma game for Alabama was the closest thing you've seen to, 9 straight win, best team in the country. Ty Simpson is a Heisman. Closest thing we've seen to that team, since maybe the Missouri game, somewhere in there. I mean, it's the closest thing you've seen to it. And in that environment in Oklahoma, down 17-0, coming back, you talk about mojo, getting hot at the right time, all the things that, teams in every sport, need to have when they're the time comes. I think Alabama has as much momentum and is as healthy as they've been, for all year. And if you're playing against Indiana, you've got to have all hands on deck getting ready, right? So I think Alabama comes out swinging. I think Indiana is a little rusty. I don't think they'll be overwhelmed by the environment. It might have a little, be a little factor at first, but they're going to settle in. For Alabama, you come out, jump out quick on this team. They haven't played in a month. Alabama had, I'm not going to say a tune-up game because it was a freaking playoff game against Oklahoma. It wasn't like Ole Miss getting to play, the local high school there or whatever. I mean, it wasn't like that. It was a great game that really had to bring the best out of you in front of, all odds, right? Look at the momentum they built there and the personnel they got. And if you're Indiana, again, we saw what happened last year. All 4 first-round teams lost. Even last night, Ohio State, even though they weren't rusty, Miami just absolutely. That was if the aliens came down and I could show them one football game. I know this might sound crazy, but that game last night, you might say recency bias, just from a standpoint of like what it takes to beat a team that's much better than you as far as, the way their seasons looked and everything. I mean, that was it. So you look at all 4 teams losing last year in the first round bye. You look at last night, again, Miami had to, get it out of them. They played a great game. It wasn't given to them, but it gives you a little bit of like, okay, this can actually happen, right? Indiana, Bama was a shoe-in for, Indiana. It is a shoe-in for Indiana, but the Ohio State Miami game, it was even more so that way, for Ohio State. And so I think, again, momentum, healthy, ready to go. All the talk about, they didn't belong, and they got ridiculed during the season, but they didn't get ridiculed, at all like they did after the Florida State loss. It was kind of some talking throughout the year. After that Florida State loss, I told you they got buried. They've been getting buried these last 12 days. Like, no shot, forget about it, but all that. Take that into account. Take into account, personnel. Kalen DeBoer, been to the national championship, more wins against, top coaches and teams than anybody in the game right now. I think the Rose Bowl, 100-year anniversary of Alabama's first Rose Bowl win, I think they pull it out. Again, I'm not going to give a score. This game could come out, Bama up, 13-0, stall out. It could come out slug, no scores till halftime. I don't know what it could be. I just think the different ways Alabama has found, to win games this year. I just think that there's been many times in the past that they got counted out and said they weren't going to win and just found a way. Just find a way. Ty Simpson, mojo. He's had that kind of, fire about him that he lost for like 6 weeks. You could see it. You saw it last week on the sidelines and everything. That, the thought of, again, being the Rose Bowl, the chance to play Indiana. I mean, all these things. I just think in some crazy way it could play out. It could happen the exact opposite way of the way I'm saying it. I just think Alabama, I just think they find a way. It's just, there's just too much talk of Indiana, right? But if Indiana comes out, and you'll be able to see it pretty quickly, how they reacted to this time off, it could end up being a long day for Alabama, right? The paths for Alabama to win don't seem like it could be a blowout if they were to win, maybe by 10 at the most, maybe 14, maybe. But the path for Indiana, if they play the way that, they've been able to execute, and Bama shows up like they did against, Georgia or whatnot, which I don't expect that, but I'm just saying it could be ugly, right? It could be all the fans are gone by the middle of the fourth quarter type game. So, yeah, again, that's what I got for you. I hope you were able to follow along. Again, I know I was probably all over the place. I had some notes written down here that I totally didn't even follow. I'm just glad to be able to do this. I hope you guys enjoy tuning in. I continue to get better at this. And if you guys continue to follow, I hope you enjoy what I put out there, right? So, again, Happy New Year. Thank God for a new year, a new day. January 1st, 2026, right? It's getting kind of crazy. So, yep, Rose Bowl, 2026, Bama, Indiana, David versus Goliath. If I'd asked you for the last 150 years, who is David, who is Goliath, kind of shows you where we're at right now. So, hope you enjoy watching. Be back soon. And have a Happy New Year.